This video is going to be about YouTube anti-consumer practices. I'm using this wording not because I'm a lawyer, but because that's the way a lawyer should be treating this. A monopoly status can be applied to any corporation that owns more than one asset, doesn't matter what they are, and causes them to be used synergistically, let's use corporate speak, to create a monopoly. Now, what does that mean? Okay, really simple. Let's say I own the patent on a bumper that on impact will always shatter people's femurs. If you're not aware of it, breaking one of the longest and largest bones in the human body is very traumatic. And if I then also own a company that sells traumatic injury braces for human femurs that have been broken exactly in the same spot above the ground because of the bumper shape. This is not a reference to SUVs. They do something more terrible. If I basically make a cow catcher bumper or a leg breaker bumper and then sell the product to solve the problem I created on purpose, this could be considered controlling both ends of a supply chain or a solution to a problem that I created. And this is the one that actually gets cited for people wondering, why are you applying a monopoly status to something like that? Because you're creating a monopoly out of something you couldn't monopolize. Normal monopolies are saying, oh, I'm using deceptive or illegal practices for the explicit goal of cornering the market in whatever. Let's say I want to run every single source of food on the West Coast, just to corner the market on the West Coast for all of the different food types. Let's pick something simple, fish. So what I would do is go around on the United States West Coast is fairly simple. It's Washington State, Oregon, and California. If I bought every port that was available and every dock, dry dock, every manufacturing and repair facility, and then started buying up every single boat by paying off everybody's debts and saying, you work for me, you own your equipment, but you have to keep giving me the fish when you get them. And I keep them supplied and keep improving their lives, but I'm literally the only source for the food because it all gets sold not to an open market, but to my conglomerate, Stinky Fish LLC. And let's say I buy up so much of the infrastructure over time with lots of shadow companies trying to avoid being declared monopoly. Finally, the finding of fact comes through and they're like, yeah, you literally bought up the entire West Coast canning, bottling, all of the equipment for producing fish sticks and fish fillets and whatever, and you're selling them out of your company and you're drowning out the competition because they can't get any fish from the West Coast because you own all of them by default. You bought up every private and small business. You deliberately helped all of them so the prices were low so they could live by, literally you didn't have to pay them anything because, well, I paid off your house and everything. But they're not really getting any income, so you're not putting any money back into the economy. You get the idea. You create this closed system that's incredibly efficient and honestly would benefit everybody, except for the fact that your goal is to run out of business every other business in it. That last part is the part that gets declared the key component in a monopoly. Your goal, not the outcome. Your goal was to wipe out your competitors, which is considered supreme capitalism, but your actions are to make it to where it's literally impossible for them to compete with you by potentially wiping you out, creating an unfair situation by not just making something and competing, but removing the environment itself from being able to be competitive. An anti-competitive business practice set. Usually, but not always, the quintessential example of that is owning the supply and the demand end of it in some way. Now we're going to talk about YouTube. On YouTube is a loss leader. Its only purpose to the conglomerate or corporation or megacorp that owns it, which is now called Alphabet, and who knows what it really is on the top tier level. Its only purpose is to drive some other product that the company can make money off of. The most common one we all cite is advertising. The website could, and I'm doing this again as my umpteenth complaint, they could do non-intrusive, user-friendly methods for making money, but they don't. The whole point of it on YouTube specifically is they don't want to, because they want to use YouTube as a test bed for screwing with the customer or screwing with the viewers. Excuse me. We're not the customers. We're the product. They're selling access to our eyes and our ears and our computers, literally in some cases by breaking into our computers through our web browsers, to make it to where they can make money in some way. Monetizing our data, monetizing our attention so advertisers get to be seen. Now, how do they do it? By screwing up the frame rate and making videos crash. I know that sounds like a leap, but let me get there. In order for them to have a monopoly status, and it's like they're going out of their way to do this, they create a problem and then the solution. You don't like the video stuttering? Are you noticing lag? Are you noticing speed issues? Well, literally pay us money and we'll stop screwing with your browser. That's what it means when they're doing the YouTube Red or YouTube Plus or whatever bullshit name they're coming up with this week, where they say they won't show ads, and then eventually they do anyway, and then you can pay for fewer ads. And eventually you find out that, no, you should have never paid them a dime because it encouraged them to do more bad behavior. What else do they do? Well, they definitely want control of your browser, but they can't really do that very easily because people like me running Firefox or literally any other browser, I'm using a variant of Firefox or some other browser at all times, they can't do anything to it. Number one, if you're smart, I try to be smart. If you're smart, you make it to where the computer erases all tracking data between reboots, and so does the browser every time you close it. So there's not enough information there to work with. So they have to get really sneaky about trying to figure out what's going on. Instead of them keeping a database of what you do on your computer, because then you'd erase it and they wouldn't have access to it, they keep it at their system. They want you to log in. So for years, they would scream at you for not logging in. For years, they would scream at you for clearing your cookies. They would create fake errors and make the damn thing not load and say, well, it's because you cleared your cache or cookies. Lately, if you turn off search history, which is you volunteering to be monitored, they just won't show you videos on the main page, which I'm perfectly okay with. Most of us have realized that eventually they just gave in and they give you suggestions because there's too much money in suggesting videos because the videos have ads associated with them. Their closed loop system I'm talking about has nothing to do with cornering the market on ads or even being a supreme video platform. They don't need to. Now it's the browser. If you haven't noticed it, the 60 frame per second or some other higher frame rate videos, by the way, are awesome on YouTube, except for one thing. They are deliberately built to sabotage your browser if it isn't Chrome. Specifically, Google Chrome conventional install. Even portable Chrome will be made to crash. The beatings will continue until morale improves. This HFR or high frame rate or 60 frames per second, FPS, or whatever setting it's called, only screws up on Firefox unless you tell Firefox to say, I'm Chrome. Literally by telling it, I'm running Windows specifically, which allows for really goofy indicators sent back to Google, and it's Chrome version 118 or 119 or 100 or whatever you pick. By using a user agent switcher, I'll have a link below in the description, suddenly the crashing stops and the stuttering stops. You might have noticed that you'll be watching a video and it'll skip ahead to 8 seconds. And the excuse given for deliberately screwing with you for not using the browser they have control over is that oh, well, this is a network error. Pay for YouTube Premium, which automatically tells you, yeah, they're just screwing with your bandwidth. They're giving you less bandwidth and then creating problems. Well, okay, why don't you go from 60 frames a second to 30 frames a second, which by definition has to take up less bandwidth. It's actually supposed to be exactly half, but they won't even do that. They always make it a little bit more than they need to. Deliberately sabotaging our viewing experience. Why do they do it? Again, they have more control over you, your computer, etc., by having control over the browser. I have a copy of Google Chrome that's been heavily restricted in its ability to do anything. and it still tunnels in and tries to do things. I use it only when I absolutely have to, because some of the crap, they just say you can't load the page unless you use Google Chrome. Period. And of course, when they figured out, oh yeah, that's literally evidence for a monopoly case, that's literally anti-competitive practice, that's literally creating a problem and then the solution so you can create a closed environment, that's literally an antitrust case, they ended up changing it back to where it works again. Oops. Yes, their lawyers told them stop doing that. You're saying the quiet part out loud. So, and of course, it's ironic it's called a trust case because obviously we don't trust them. That's where the word trust came from. It's because we would trust industry not to screw us over. And that's when the U.S. government realized getting into bed with large industries that say, trust me, is immediately when you should literally dismantle the conglomerates and tear them apart and take all the fat cats outside. And I'm thinking about the French Revolution. So how do we fix this problem? Number one, loading up add-ons. I'm loading 2 of them to turn off 60 frames a second. At one time would let me run it at 30 frames a second because YouTube actually is lying about you not being able to do that. Now it just makes it to where that video resolution is missing because YouTube, of course, was told, you're letting people know that really there's no problem here. They could just turn off 60 frames a second. That was something they had as an option. You could turn off HFR in the settings about 3 years ago. Then they decided, oh, that means obviously us defaulting to turning it on and messing with your bandwidth and then saying, would you like to buy YouTube Premium? Yeah, that's a real obvious. So they just removed the 30 frame a second option. So now it just makes it to where you can watch it in 720p and no higher if you do 30 frames a second. Even on videos that used to have the ability. Even on videos that were never 60 frames a second, it now says that it's 60 frames a second. It just excludes high resolution unless you buy access or you use their stupid browser. So anyway, I load up 1 or 2, usually takes 2, add-ons that I eventually have to turn off or on and get them to work again to turn off 60 frames a second. Currently, I just can't watch high-resolution videos. At least I can watch them. It doesn't create a pause. For the last week, it's been stalling the video and not letting it play at all, making it to where it's effectively denying me access to the website. That's fine, except it's on videos like the one you're watching that are deliberately at NTSC resolution. This is low res, actually half res, at low frame rate. I deliberately use the shittiest resolution possible so that they can't upscale it, so they can never do this. Once I heard that they were murmuring about doing this in the past, I knew they were going to weaponize it. That's why all my videos play back. They should play back correctly. If you ever see 60 frames a second high res, unless it's obvious that it should be, if it's one of these videos, it's because they upscaled it so that they can make it to where you couldn't play it because you weren't using the right browser. You have a wrong opinion on your browser. So again, the solutions. 1, loading up a bunch of add-ons that either disable the resolutions I might want to use, at least because they don't play anyway. 2, switching to 30 frames a second instead of 60 if it's still available in the video. I actually have that done on a priority first, so I can still watch the video. It just isn't high frame rate. And then last, tell your computer to lie to YouTube and say that it's Google Chrome. It'll work for a while. Yeah, that's all I got. Just lie to their website and tell them you're using Chrome so they can puff their chest and say, Chrome is the most popular browser. Yeah. And, again, this is antitrust case evidence. They're doing everything they can. Now remember, it's an LLC or a limited, it's a corporation. So YouTube itself can be sued. Or Google, Google's parent company, Alphabet. But they can't sue the individuals running it. So the fat cats get to leave with the money while all the investors watch it burn someday. And again, this is all to make temporary money so they can get their gold-plated toilet seats on their yachts and be done with it. So yeah, you can disable the 60 frames a second and it'll either turn off that resolution, which, again, if you can't play it and make it work, might just as well, or it'll just make it to where it plays correctly and undoes the problem they caused, and you may have to do both. You can also tell your computer's web browser to identify as Google Chrome. Yes, there's a pun joke there. It's an anti-dad joke. You can tell it to identify as being Google Chrome 118 or whatever, and it might fix it. Thanks for watching. Have a good day. Good luck with that.